Commander Tark Voros stared at the tactical display with what passed for dismay among the Ordari species. His secondary heart valves constricted painfully as the red dots representing coalition ships blinked out one by one. The swarm was advancing faster than anyone had predicted. Again, another fleet lost, he muttered, his voice carrying the distinctive warble that humans found so amusing. Humans. The thought of those strange bipeds made his facial ridges twitch with irritation. And where are our supposed saviors? Probably still arguing about which pointless recreational activity they should engage in before bothering to show up. His second-in-command, Subcommander Pelna, approached cautiously. She had served with Tark long enough to recognize when his mood was dangerous. Commander, we have received word from the human delegation. They are requesting permission to board. Tark's skin shifted to a mottled purple. Oh, now they decide to grace us with their presence? How generous of them. Only 6 billion dead since we first reached out to their insignificant planet. Sir, the Council believes I know what the Council believes, Tark snapped, slamming his three-finger hand on the console. The Council believes these primitive mammals will somehow succeed where 37 far more advanced species have failed. The Council, in their infinite wisdom, has placed the survival of galactic civilization in the hands of creatures who still find bodily functions amusing. Pelna remained silent, knowing better than to interrupt one of the commander's tirades. Do you know what the human representative said when I explained the gravity of our situation? He said, and I quote, "Well, that sounds like a Tuesday." A Tuesday, Pelna, as if comparing the potential extinction of all advanced life to an arbitrary day in their ridiculous 7-day cycle somehow makes it less catastrophic. Tark's skin was now approaching a dangerous violet hue. Pelna stepped back, concerned that his blood pressure might trigger a diplomatic incident. Sir, shall I deny their request to board? The commander deflated slightly, his color fading to a resigned blue-gray. No, let them come. The Council has spoken, but I want a full security detail. And for the love of the eternal void, make sure they don't bring any of that horrible brown stimulant they are addicted to. The last time, 3 of our crew had to be sedated after accidentally consuming it. Coffee, sir. I believe they call it coffee. I don't care if they call it the elixir of the gods. It's a biohazard, and I want it kept off my station. Yes, Commander. As Pelna turned to leave, the station's alert system blared. The tactical display shifted to show a new threat emerging from hyperspace. Swarm vessels, shouted the sensor operator, a young Relari whose feather crest was standing fully erect in alarm. 3 dreadnoughts and supporting craft. They have found us. Tark cursed in ancient Ordari, a language so complex that the universal translators struggled to keep up. Evacuation protocols. Now, he ordered, already calculating their slim chances of escape. And get those humans on board immediately. If we're going to die, they might as well join us. Lieutenant Jackson Wade of the United Earth Defense Force tried not to look impressed as he stepped onto the Ordari command station. He failed miserably. The cavernous docking bay gleamed with technology that made Earth's most advanced facilities look like children's toys. Translucent energy conduits pulsed with exotic particles, and gravity shifted subtly as they moved from one section to another. Holy smokes, whispered Sergeant Diaz beside him. This place makes our International Space Station look like a shoebox with windows. Keep it professional, Jackson muttered back. Remember the briefing. These aliens already think we are primitive. Let's not confirm it by gawking like tourists. The delegation consisted of 5 humans. Jackson, Diaz, Dr. Amara Okafor, Professor Tom Prescott, and Captain Lena Novak. They represented military tactics, ground combat, xenobiology, physics, and aerospace engineering, respectively. Earth's hasty attempt to assemble a team that might somehow help with an interstellar war they barely understood. In Ordari, in an elaborate uniform approached, flanked by guards whose weapons were conspicuously not holstered. Welcome aboard the Luminous Accord, the aliens said without preamble or warmth. Yam Sukumander Bilna. Commander awaits you on the bridge. Please surrender any weapons and follow me. Jackson stepped forward. Lieutenant Wade, United Earth Defense Force. We are grateful for... We are under attack, Pelna interrupted. The swarm has found this station. We have approximately 18 minutes before their vanguard arrives. The commander thought you should know that your arrival may have been for nothing. Jackson exchanged glances with his team. That's not the welcome I expected. Did you expect celebratory singing? A formal banquet, perhaps? Pelna's voice had the distinctive Ordari tone that the translation software rendered as sarcasm. We are fighting for the survival of all intelligent life. Forgive us if we forego pleasantries. A violent shudder ran through the station, causing the humans to stagger. What was that? Asked Professor Prescott, clutching his tablet computer like a shield. The swarm has arrived early, Pelna replied with eerie calm. How unfortunate. Now we have no time at all. Commander Tark watched the human delegation enter his bridge with a mixture of desperation and resignation. They looked so fragile, so fleshy. Their limbs moved in unsettling ways, and their faces were disturbingly mobile. Commander Voros, said the one in front, extending a hand in what Tark knew was a customary human greeting. He reluctantly touched his own hand to it, suppressing a shudder at the alien warmth. Lieutenant Wade, you have arrived just in time for our destruction. How fitting that we should all perish together in the spirit of interspecies cooperation. The human's expression shifted in a way Tark couldn't interpret. That bad, huh? 3 swarm dreadnoughts against our damaged station and the remnants of our fleet? Yes, Lieutenant. It's that bad. I suggest you make peace with whatever deities you worship. To Tark's surprise, the human smiled. It was an alarming expression that revealed too many teeth. Mind if we take a look at your tactical situation before we start planning our funerals? Before Tark could object, the 5 humans spread out around the command center, each gravitating toward their area of expertise. The female engineer, Novak, if you remember correctly, was already in deep conversation with his propulsion officer. The professor was examining the sensor readings with disturbing intensity, while the dark-skinned xenobiologist was studying the biological readouts from swarm captives. What do you think you are doing? Tark demanded. Our jobs, Wade replied simply. You asked for help. We are helping. This is highly irregular. You can't just— Commander, interrupted the gruff-looking human called Diaz. Your defense grid is all wrong. You have got your energy fields configured to block direct fire, but these swarm things don't attack that way. They're using some kind of phase-shifted weaponry. Tark blinked his 4 eyes in sequence, the Ordari equivalent of stunned silence. How could you possibly know that? You have only just arrived. The xenobiologist, Dr. Okafor, looked up from her station. It's obvious from the biological samples. The swarm's neural structure suggests phase-shifted perception. They don't see reality the same way we do. Their weapons would naturally operate on the same principle. We have been fighting the swarm for 27 years, Tark said coldly. I think we understand their capabilities better than— Another violent shudder interrupted him, and the lights flickered ominously. Direct hit to sections 12 through 15, reported Pelna. Shields failing. Reconfigure the shields, shouted Professor Prescott, typing furiously on his device. Invert the harmonic frequency and pulse them at irregular intervals. That's not how our shield technology works, the Ordari shield operator protested. It's how all shield technology works if you understand the underlying physics. Prescott countered, his face flushed with excitement or terror, or possibly both. Energy is energy. Just do it. To Tark's astonishment, the human was right. When they reconfigured the shields according to the professor's specifications, the next swarm attack dissipated harmlessly against the barrier. How did you— Tark began. You guys overthink everything, Wade said with a casual shrug that made Tark's spine ridge bristle. Sometimes the simple solution is the best one. Simple. Tark nearly choked on the word. Your species still hasn't achieved faster-than-light travel independently. No, but we have spent our entire history trying to kill each other in increasingly creative ways, Captain Novak pointed out from across the bridge. We are really, really good at fighting. Another impact rocked the station, but less severely this time. This is merely delaying the inevitable, Tark insisted. The swarm will adapt. They always do. Then we adapt faster, Wade replied, studying the tactical display. What's the ship here? The one holding position behind your defensive line. Tark glanced at the display. The Resolute Dawn, our antimatter containment vessel. We use it to refuel the fleet. A slow smile spread across Wade's face. So, basically a giant bomb waiting to happen. It contains enough antimatter to. Tark stopped as he realized the human's intention. No, absolutely not. That ship contains 30 years of carefully harvested antimatter. It's irreplaceable. So, is your civilization? Wade countered. Look, we need a distraction. Something big enough to give us time to evacuate or counterattack. I will not sacrifice. Sub-Commander. Wade turned to Pelna, ignoring protocol in a way that made Tark's skin flush orange with indignation. If that ship explodes near the swarm dreadnoughts, what happens? Pelna hesitated, caught between her commander's obvious disapproval and military necessity. The resulting explosion would likely destroy or severely damage all vessels within a 3 light-minute radius. Perfect. And how do we make that happen? This is insubordination. Tark thundered. I'm still in command of this station. For how much longer? Wade asked quietly, gesturing toward the tactical display where more coalition ships were blinking out of existence. 5 minutes? 10? How many more people are you willing to sacrifice to preserve a fuel tank? The bridge fell silent. All eyes, human and alien, fixed on Tark. He felt the weight of command pressing down on him, heavier than the gravity of a neutron star. Prepare the resolute dawn for self-destruct, he finally said, his voice barely audible. And may the void forgive me. Sergeant Maria Diaz had seen some crazy stuff in her 17 years of military service. Desert firefights, jungle ambushes, that weird incident with the experimental AI in Seoul. But watching an antimatter storage vessel explode in the vacuum of space, that was definitely going on her list of stories no one back home will believe. The explosion wasn't like in the movies. There was no dramatic fireball, just a sudden, eye-searing flash of pure white light, followed by a rippling distortion of space itself. The energy release was so massive that it briefly created its own gravity well, dragging nearby vessels, including 2 swarm dreadnoughts, into its destructive embrace. Holy Mother of, she whispered, blinking away the afterimages burned into her retinas. Did it work? Commander Tark demanded, his alien features taut with anxiety. 2 dreadnoughts confirmed destroyed. Pelna reported, her voice carefully professional despite the circumstances. The 3rd is heavily damaged and retreating. Swarm support vessels are in disarray. A ragged cheer went up from both the coalition crew and the human delegation. Diaz found herself clapping a scaled alien on the back, only realizing afterward that it might be a grave cultural offense. The alien, however, seemed too relieved to care. We did it, Professor Prescott exclaimed, his earlier terror transformed into elation. We actually did it. But Lieutenant Wade wasn't celebrating. He was still studying the tactical display, his expression serious. This isn't over, he said, loud enough to quiet the impromptu celebration. They will be back, and in greater numbers. This was just a scout force. Commander Tark approached the human, his posture stiff but lacking its earlier hostility. You are correct, Lieutenant. The swarm always returns. We have merely bought ourselves time. Time is all we need, Wade replied. Time to evacuate this station, regroup with your fleet, and plan our counterattack. Counterattack? Tark's 4 eyes blinked in astonishment. No species has successfully mounted a counteroffensive against the swarm in over a decade. Then it's about time someone did, Wade said with a confidence that Diaz knew was at least partly an act. That was Wade's special talent, appearing absolutely certain even when he was making it up as he went along. Tark studied the human for a long moment, then made a complex gesture that the translation software didn't attempt to interpret. Perhaps, the alien commander finally said, the Council was not entirely misguided in seeking your assistance. Your species' approach is unorthodox. That's a polite way of saying we are reckless, Captain Novak commented with a grin. Oh, you are most definitely reckless, Tark agreed. But the swarm has never encountered recklessness on this scale before. It may be precisely what we need. The station shuddered again, but this time it was the engines powering up rather than enemy fire. Evacuation protocols are in effect, Pelna announced. All non-essential personnel are proceeding to transport vessels. As the bridge crew prepared the station for abandonment, Diaz found herself standing next to Dr. Okafor, who was still studying the biological readouts from his swarm specimens. Found anything useful? Diaz asked. Maybe, The xenobiologist replied thoughtfully. These creatures, they are not what I expected. Their biology suggests they might be. She trailed off, her expression troubled. Might be what? Engineered, Okafor said quietly. These aren't natural life forms. Someone made them. And if I'm reading these molecular markers correctly, they made them recently, within the last century. Diaz felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. You mean someone created these things on purpose? To what end? That, said Commander Tark, who had approached silently despite his bulky form, is the question that has haunted the Coalition since the swarm first appeared. Who created them? Why? And why do they seem fixated on destroying all intelligent life while preserving our worlds and infrastructure? A weapon that saves the real estate, Wade mused, joining their conversation. Sounds like someone's planning to move in after the extermination is complete. Tark's skin rippled in what might have been agreement. We have considered this possibility. But in 27 years, we have found no evidence of a controlling intelligence behind the swarm. Then we need to look harder, Wade said firmly. Because nobody builds a weapon this complex without an endgame in mind. As the evacuation alarms blared around them, the strange alliance of humans and aliens began formulating a plan that would either save galactic civilization or accelerate its downfall. And for the first time in many cycles, Commander Tarkvoros felt something he had almost forgotten. The Coalition flagship Unyielding Resolve wasn't nearly as unyielding as its name suggested. Its reinforced hull plating bore the scars of countless battles. Patches of mismatched metals grafted onto the original structure like metallic scar tissue. The ship had been beautiful once, with sleek lines and elegant proportions that reflected the Ordari aesthetic preference for symmetry and mathematical precision. Now it was a war machine, function ruthlessly prioritized over form. Lieutenant Jackson Wade tried not to wince as Commander Tark led the human delegation through corridors packed with refugees from the abandoned station. The air recyclers struggled to keep up with the overcrowding, creating a thick, soupy atmosphere that smelled of too many species breathing the same oxygen. Your accommodation will be adequate, Tark said, gesturing toward what appeared to be a repurposed storage bay. We have adjusted the environmental controls to approximate Earth conditions. You will find the gravity uncomfortably light and the temperature excessively warm, but you should survive. Gee, thanks for the 5-star treatment, Sergeant Diaz muttered under her breath that Tark's auditory membranes fluttered. Your sarcasm is noted, Sergeant. Would you prefer to sleep in the vacuum of space? I'm sure that could be arranged. Dr. Okafor stepped between them with a diplomatic smile. The accommodations are fine, Commander. We appreciate your hospitality during this crisis. Tark made a gurgling sound that the translation software rendered as grudging acknowledgement. The War Council will convene in 2 standard hours. I suggest you use that time to prepare your proposal. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, an Ordari expression of skepticism. I warn you, the other species representatives will be less receptive to human impulsiveness than I have been. Less receptive? Wade raised an eyebrow. Hard to imagine. Indeed. Some will likely advocate for using you as biological diversions while the rest of us retreat to the outer rim. Tark's skin rippled in what might have been amusement. I, however, am beginning to see the tactical value in your species' unique brand of reckless improvisation. With that backhanded compliment, the commander departed, leaving the humans to settle into their makeshift quarters. Well, he's warming up to us, Captain Novak observed, testing the springiness of what passed for a bed among the Ordari. Yesterday, he wanted us off his station. Today, he only wants to use us as cannon fodder as a last resort. Progress. Professor Prescott was already unpacking his equipment, muttering calculations under his breath. The swarm's phase-shifted weaponry suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of quantum harmonics among the Coalition scientists. If we recalibrate their defensive systems using a modified Schrödinger approach. Tom, Wade interrupted. In English, please. What are you saying? The professor looked up, blinking as if surprised to find himself not alone. I'm saying we can hurt them. The swarm, I mean. Their technology is advanced, but it's predictable. They rely on overwhelming force rather than innovation. Classic sign of a hive mind, Dr. Okafor added, her fingers dancing across her tablet as she reviewed the biological data she'd downloaded from a station. The individual units lack creativity. They execute their programming perfectly, but they can't think laterally. Unlike humans, Diaz said with a grim smile, cleaning her sidearm despite there being little chance she'd need it aboard the flagship. Old habits die hard. Lateral thinking is what we do best, especially when we are backed into a corner. Wade nodded, staring out a viewport at the assembled coalition fleet. Dozens of vessels of varying designs and sizes, representing the combined military might of 37 spacefaring civilizations. It should have been an awe-inspiring sight. Instead, it looked like a funeral procession. 2 hours to convince a bunch of desperate aliens that 5 humans can somehow turn the tide of a war they have been losing for nearly 3 decades, he said quietly. No pressure. The War Council chamber resembled an amphitheater, with concentric rings of seating descending toward a central platform. Each delegation occupied a section adjusted to their specific biological needs, different atmospheric mixtures, gravity settings, temperature zones. The human section was wedged between the methane-breathing Vortec, who looked like ambulatory crystal formations, and the aquatic Naiadi, who floated in personal containment spheres filled with greenish liquid. Commander Tark stood on the central platform beside a holographic display of the known galaxy. Nearly a third of it glowed red, marking territory lost to the swarm. The evacuation of Station Lumina was completed with minimal casualties, he announced, his amplified voice echoing throughout the chamber. Thanks to a tactical intervention suggested by the human delegation, we were able to destroy 2 swarm dreadnoughts and damage a third. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Wade couldn't tell if it was impressed or skeptical. However, Tark continued, our long-range sensors detect a much larger swarm fleet assembling near the Carina Nebula. Conservative estimates suggest over 200 capital ships, including at least 15 dreadnoughts. They will reach our position within 48 standard hours. The murmur became a roar of dismay. A translator near Wade's ear rendered fragments of different languages. Retreat immediately. Abandon the sector. Final evacuation. A willowy being with pale blue skin and 4 arms rose from the inner ring. The Coalition identification system projected a label identifying them as Ambassador Nilo of the Thraxi Confederation. Commander, we must face reality, Nilo said, their musical voice somehow conveying despair despite its beauty. The Corward defense line cannot hold against such numbers. We must withdraw to the Perseus Arm while we still can. Withdrawal means abandoning 12 heavily populated systems. Counter a squat, armored figure that Wade's display identified as General Brooks of the Krill Imperium. Billions of lives. Better billions than trillions, Nilo replied. A strategic retreat. Retreat, retreat. Always retreat, thundered Brooks, pounding a massive fist against the railing before him. The Krill did not become warriors by running from battle. The Krill will not become anything if they are extinct, Nilo shot back. The chamber erupted into factional arguments. Wade exchanged glances with his team. This was not promising. Commander Tark raised all 4 of his arms, calling for order. We have guests among us. The human delegation has requested to address the council. A sudden, suspicious silence fell over the assembly. All eyes and various other sensory organs turned toward the human section. Wade stood, feeling absurdly small among the diverse alien representatives. He cleared his throat. Distinguished members of the coalition, he began, thankful for the diplomatic training that Earth's governments had hastily provided before this mission. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for welcoming us into your alliance despite our junior status as a spacefaring species. Junior is generous, someone muttered, loudly enough to be heard. They are practically embryonic. Wade ignored the jab. We have reviewed your tactical data, studied the biological samples of the swarm, and analyzed your previous encounters with them. And we have come to a conclusion that may surprise you. He paused, making eye contact with as many different species as he could manage. You have been fighting this war wrong. The chamber exploded with outrage. General Brooks rose to his full height, towering over his section. This is an insult. The coalition military has employed the finest tactical mind from across the galaxy, and they have successfully overseen 27 years of steady defeat, Wade replied, his voice cutting through the uproar. With all due respect, General, Continuing to do what hasn't worked seems like the definition of insanity. Let him speak. Tark intervened, surprising Wade with his support. We have nothing to lose by listening. The protests subsided grudgingly. Wade nodded his thanks to the commander. Dr. Okafor, our xenobiologist, has made a discovery regarding the swarm's neural structure. He continued, gesturing for Amara to join him. She stepped forward, projecting data from her tablet onto the central holographic display. The swarm organisms possess a unique form of distributed consciousness, she explained. Each individual drone is connected to a central intelligence, but that connection requires constant quantum entanglement to maintain. This is known interrupted a gaseous entity floating in a containment field. The Maldorian Science Directorate documented this phenomenon 23 years ago. Yes, Amara agreed smoothly. But what you fail to recognize is that this connection has a specific frequency signature, a signature that can be disrupted. The gaseous being pulsed rapidly, their version of agitation. Impossible. We have attempted communication jamming since the beginning of the conflict. Not jamming, Professor Prescott interjected, joining them on the platform. His earlier nervousness had vanished, replaced by the confidence of a man in his element. Resonance. We don't need to block their communications. We need to introduce a competing signal on the same frequency. He manipulated the holographic display, showing a simulation of overlapping waveforms. Think of it like noise-canceling technology, but for consciousness itself, he explained. We create a counterwave that disrupts the swarm's collective mind. Not enough to destroy them, but enough to disorient them, to make them vulnerable. General Brooks leaned forward, his reptilian features intense. And how do you propose to generate this counterwave? Captain Novak stepped up, grinning. That's where I come in. We repurpose your ship's communication arrays. With some modifications, we can turn your entire fleet into one massive broadcasting station. This is absurd, Ambassador Nilo protested. You are suggesting we weaken our defensive capabilities on the eve of battle based on a theory proposed by a species that still uses combustion engines. Actually, Diaz drawled, we use ion propulsion now. Caught up to you guys on that one at least. Wade shot her a warning look before addressing the assembly again. We are not asking you to disarm yourselves. We are asking for 20 ships, less than 10% of your fleet, to be modified according to our specifications. 20 ships that could otherwise be firing upon the enemy, Brooks growled. 20 ships that might change the nature of this war, Wade countered. Look, I get it. We're the new kids on the block. You have been fighting and dying while we were still figuring out how to reach Mars. But sometimes an outside perspective is exactly what you need. He gestured at the galactic map, with its expanding red stain of swarm territory. You have been fighting a conventional war against an unconventional enemy. The swarm doesn't think like you do. It doesn't fear death or defeat. It doesn't recognize surrender. It just consumes, adapts, and advances. You can't beat it by playing its game. Commander Tark stepped closer, his 4 eyes fixed on Wade. And you believe you can win by changing the rules of engagement? I believe we can survive long enough to find out who's really behind the swarm, Wade replied. Because that's the key, isn't it? Someone engineered these things. Someone pointed them at galactic civilization and said, find that someone, and you might just end this war. A thoughtful silence fell over the assembly. Finally, Tark turned to address them. I have seen these humans in action, he said, his tone solemn. Their methods are unorthodox, even reckless by our standards. But in one encounter, they achieved what my battle group could not in 3 months of conventional warfare. They destroyed 2 dreadnoughts with minimal losses. He paused, his skin shifting through a complex pattern of colors that the translation software didn't attempt to interpret. I propose we allocate the requested resources to implement their strategy. Not because I fully trust their judgment, but because I trust the judgment that led us to seek their assistance in the first place. The vote was far from unanimous, but in the end, the humans got their 20 ships. The swarm arrived exactly when predicted, their fleet materializing from hyperspace in a perfectly choreographed formation. No wastid motion, no tactical hesitation. Just the cold efficiency of a predator that knew its prey was cornered. They are beautiful in a terrifying way, Dr. Okafor murmured, watching the tactical display from the unyielding Resolve bridge. Evolution perfected through artificial means. Save the scientific appreciation for after we survive this, Diaz suggested, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Unlike the others, she had no technical role to play in the coming battle. If their plan failed, she'd likely die without ever firing a shot. The thought clearly rankled her. Commander Tark stood at the center of the bridge, his posture rigid even by Ordari standards. All vessels report ready, Lieutenant Wade. Your modified ships are in position. Wade nodded, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. Begin the broadcast on my mark. Professor Prescott hovered over a console, making final adjustments to the transmission frequency. Remember, we will only get one shot at this. Once the swarm adapts to the counter signal, the technique becomes useless. Then we better make it count, Captain Novak said grimly, her attention focused on monitoring the modified ship's power outputs. All transmitters showing green. We're good to go. The swarm fleet advanced in perfect formation, their forward elements already beginning to engage the Coalition's defensive pickets. On the tactical display, the first blue dots began to blink out. Wade took a deep breath. Mark, the modified Coalition ships powered down their weapons and defensive systems, diverting all energy to their reconfigured communication arrays. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. The swarm continued its inexorable advance, unaffected. It's not working, Tark said, his voice tight. We have sacrificed 20 ships for nothing. Give it time, Prescott insisted, his fingers dancing across the controls. The counterwave needs to build to a critical threshold before. The tactical display suddenly flickered. The perfect formation of the swarm vessels wavered, their movements becoming erratic. They are losing coordination, Pelna reported, unable to keep the astonishment from her voice. Swarm vessels are breaking formation. Some appear to be firing on their own units. A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew. Wade allowed himself a small smile of relief, but kept his focus on the display. The disruption was spreading through the swarm fleet like a contagion. Conventional forces engage at will, Tark ordered, a new note of fierce joy in his voice. Target their dreadnoughts first. The Coalition fleet surged forward, weapons blazing as they tore into the disorganized swarm. Without their perfect coordination, the enemy vessels were still dangerous but no longer presented a unified threat. It's working better than we anticipated, Prescott said, sounding almost giddy. The disruption is cascading through their entire neural network. Wait, Dr. Okafor interrupted, pointing to a new reading on her console. Something's happening. There's a power surge in the lead dreadnought. It's like they are. A blinding flash erupted from the center of the swarm formation. When the visual filters cleared, the lead dreadnought was gone, replaced by an expanding sphere of debris. Did we do that? Diaz asked, confused. No, Okafor replied, her expression troubled. They did. The dreadnought self-destructed. Why would they? Wade began, then stopped as understanding dawned. They are cutting their losses, severing the infected part of the network. One by one, other swarm vessels began to explode, not from Coalition fire, but from within, each detonation taking out any nearby Coalition ships in the process. They are destroying themselves to prevent us from capturing intact vessels, Tark realized, to keep us from learning more about their creators. Or they're being destroyed remotely, Wade suggested, by whoever controls them. Before Tark could respond, a priority alert flashed on the main display. A new contact had appeared on the edge of the battlefield. A single vessel unlike any in either fleet. Unknown configuration, Pelna reported. Not Coalition, not Swarm. It's broadcasting something. A holographic figure materialized on the bridge. A tall, bipedal being with an elongated cranium and eyes that glowed with an inner light. Its appearance triggered gasps from several crew members. Precursor, Tark whispered, using a term Wade's translator didn't attempt to convert. The figure surveyed the bridge with evident disdain. When it spoke, its voice had a strange, layered quality, as if multiple entities were speaking in perfect unison. This experiment has yielded unexpected results, it said. The human variable was not accounted for. Wade stepped forward, ignoring Tark's warning gesture. Who are you? Are you responsible for the swarm? The being's gaze fixed on him, its glowing eyes narrowing. We are the architects. The swarm is our instrument, designed to test the evolutionary fitness of this galaxy species. For 10,000 cycles, we have cultivated and culled, guiding the development of intelligent life. You have been murdering trillions for some kind of sick experiment, Diaz demanded, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. Not murder, refinement. The architect corrected, showing no concern for her hostility. Those who cannot adapt do not deserve to exist. This is the law of the cosmos. Tark's skin had turned an ashen gray. The legends were true. The ancient ones never left. They have been watching us, testing us, all this time. Your species showed promise, Ordari, the architect said. But ultimately, you disappointed us. You learned to cooperate, but not to innovate. You built a coalition that preserved your weaknesses rather than transcending them. Its gaze returned to Wade. But you humans, you are different. Flawed, primitive, chaotic. Yet you discovered in days what the coalition could not in decades. You are dangerous. Thanks for the compliment, Wade replied with forced calm. Now call off your swarm, or we will show you just how dangerous we can be. The architect made a sound that might have been laughter. The swarm is but one of our tools, human. We have watched your species from afar. Your potential is considerable, but so is your capacity for self-destruction. You will be studied more closely before a final determination is made. With that cryptic statement, the hologram vanished. The unknown vessel immediately jumped to hyperspace, disappearing from sensors. Throughout the battlefield, the remaining swarm ships began to withdraw, their movements once again coordinated and purposeful. They are retreating, Pelna announced, disbelief evident in her voice. All swarm vessels are disengaging and jumping to hyperspace. The bridge erupted in celebration, crew members embracing regardless of species or rank. But Wade noticed that Commander Tark remained rigid, his four eyes fixed on the spot where the architect's hologram had stood. It's not over, the Ordari said quietly when Wade approached him. They are merely reconsidering their approach. No, it's not over, Wade agreed. But for the first time in 27 years, you have won a decisive battle against the swarm. That counts for something. Tark's skin shifted through a complex pattern of colors before settling on a deep blue. Perhaps what we needed all along was not better technology or larger fleets, but the chaotic creativity that your species embodies. In other words, we needed someone crazy enough to try the impossible, Wade translated with a slight smile. Indeed, Tark extended his three-fingered hand in the human gesture he had once found so distasteful. The Coalition owes humanity a debt, Lieutenant. And I owe you an apology for my initial skepticism. Wade clasped the alien's hand firmly. Apology accepted, Commander. Now, shall we discuss our next move? Because something tells me the architects aren't going to give us much time to celebrate. Yes, Tark agreed, his voice stronger now. We must prepare. The swarm was merely a vanguard. If the legends of the precursors are true, then what comes next will test not just our military might, but the very foundations of our diverse civilizations. He turned to address the entire bridge. Send word to all Coalition worlds. The tide has turned, but a greater storm approaches. Today, we do not just fight for survival. We fight for the right to determine our own evolutionary destiny. As Tark continued outlining plans for a counteroffensive, Wade found himself standing with his team, the 5 humans who had somehow changed the course of an interstellar war. So, Diaz said casually, we have gone from barely reaching Mars to pissing off ancient alien overlords who have been manipulating galactic evolution for millennia. Not bad for our first week in space. Something tells me, Dr. Okafor replied with a wry smile, that humanity's reputation for causing trouble is going to spread far beyond Earth now. Professor Prescott nodded thoughtfully. They called us dangerous. Coming from beings who created the swarm, I'm taking that as a compliment. They also said we will be studied more closely, Captain Novak pointed out, which sounds ominous. Wade watched as the Coalition fleet regrouped, the diverse vessels moving with new purpose and coordination. For the first time since their arrival, he felt a genuine sense of hope. Let them study us, he said quietly. They will learn what countless others have discovered throughout human history. We don't take kindly to being someone else's experiment. The stars continued their silent watch as the unlikely alliance of humans and aliens prepared for the next phase of a war that had just become infinitely more complex. The architects had revealed themselves, But in doing so, they had also revealed a crucial weakness. They could be surprised. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was being unpredictable. The defeat that had once seemed certain for the Galactic Coalition had transformed into an uncertain future. But uncertainty, as humanity had always known, meant possibility. And possibility meant hope.